He noticed her the moment she walked into the operations hall, though he pretended not to. She didn't belong there. Or at least that's what Colonel Marcus Hale thought. The hall buzzed with the usual pre-brief chaos. Boots scraping concrete, radios crackling, officers exchanging clipped sentences filled with acronyms and half-finished plans. The walls were lined with digital maps, blinking coordinates, threat overlays. This was a place of noise, authority, and sharp edges. And then there was her. She stood near the back, hands folded loosely in front of her, posture calm but not timid. No rank insignia visible beyond a plain jacket. No entourage, no loud voice demanding attention. Just a quiet woman with dark hair pulled back neatly, eyes observant, unreadable. Marcus leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Who invited the librarian?" he muttered, just loud enough for the officers around him to hear, and a few chuckles rippled through his side of the table. She didn't react. That annoyed him more than anything. Marcus Hale had spent 22 years climbing his way up through the ranks. Combat, tours, medals, scars he didn't talk about. He was used to respect, immediate, unquestioned, and he had zero patience for civilians wandering into military briefings they didn't understand. He glanced to the roster again. Her name wasn't there. Or maybe he just hadn't bothered to look carefully. "All right, let's get this moving," Marcus said, clapping his hands once. "Some of us actually have a war to plan." His eyes flicked back to her. She met his gaze briefly. No challenge, no apology, just acknowledgement. That calm made his jaw tighten. Throughout the morning, he kept at it. When she chose a seat at the edge of the table, he deliberately spoke over her when she tried to ask a question, softly, politely. When coffee was brought in, he joked loudly about outsiders enjoying the perks. When a junior officer hesitated during a tactical explanation, Marcus said, "Relax, Captain. This isn't a book club." More laughter. Still, she said nothing and flushed cheeks. No defensive posture. No storming out. She simply observed, and remembered why mid-morning, Marcus felt oddly restless. He couldn't explain why, but her presence felt deliberate, like a test he hadn't studied for. During a break, he overheard two intelligence analysts whispering near the window. "Is that her?" one asked. "I think so." Marcus frowned. He stepped closer. "Is that who?" Both analysts stiffened. "Sir, nothing, sir." Marcus narrowed his eyes, but let it go. When the briefing resumed, she finally spoke again. "Colonel Hale," she said calmly, voice even and measured, "may I clarify something about your Northern Corridor extraction plan?" The room quieted slightly. Not completely, but enough. Marcus didn't like being questioned, especially not by someone who looked like she'd wandered in from an academic conference. He leaned forward. "Unless you've got operational experience in contested zones, I think we're good." Her lips curved, just barely. "I do," she replied, and a few eyebrows rose. Marcus scoffed. "Sure you do." Silence followed. The air felt heavier now, like pressure building before a storm. She didn't argue, didn't list credentials, didn't raise her voice. She simply nodded and sat back. And that somehow felt worse. The morning dragged on, and Marcus continued his subtle campaign of dismissal. Sarcasm wrapped in professionalism, mockery disguised as humor. Each time, she absorbed it without visible reaction. But people were noticing that a major across the table avoided Marcus's eyes. The intelligence chief frowned more often than usual. Even Marcus's second-in-command, Lieutenant Colonel Reyes, shifted uncomfortably. "Sir," Reyes murmured during another pause. "Maybe we should—" "We're fine," Marcus snapped. "Focus." At 1,145 hours, the door at the far end of the hall opened. A sharp knock echoed once. Everyone turned and a uniformed aide stepped in, posture rigid. "Colonel Hale." "Yes." "You're requested in the conference room." "Immediately." Marcus exhaled sharply. "I'm in the middle of it's not optional, sir." The aide's tone carried something unusual, respect, and urgency. Marcus stood, straightening his jacket. "Fine. 5 minutes." As he turned to leave, he glanced, almost unconsciously, at the quiet woman. She met his eyes again. This time, there was something else there. Not superiority, certainty. The conference room was smaller, colder. The kind of room where careers shifted direction. Inside stood 3 people. The base commander, a legal officer, and a man Marcus recognized instantly from high-level briefings. The man didn't smile. Colonel Hale, the base commander, said, "Please sit." Marcus's pulse ticked faster. Saturday, the commander folded his hands. This morning, an inspector general arrived unannounced to observe operational conduct, leadership behavior, and compliance with protocol. Marcus swallowed. "Sir, I wasn't informed. That was intentional." The legal officer slid a folder across the table that Marcus's eyes dropped to the cover. The Inspector General Review. Finfago's throat went dry. The commander continued, voice steady. The Inspector General chose to embed quietly, without formal introduction, to observe unfiltered behavior. Marcus felt a chill creep up his spine. "Colonel," the commander said slowly, "do you recall a quiet woman attending your briefing this morning?" Time seemed to slow. Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man from high command finally spoke. "She has already submitted preliminary observations." Marcus's heart hammered. "Would you like to know," the man asked, "what she noted first?" Marcus nodded stiffly. Leadership through intimidation masked as humor. The words hit like a blow. The commander leaned forward. "Colonel Hale, the Inspector General is still in your operations hall." Marcus's face drained of color. The realization crashed over him with brutal clarity. The quiet woman. His breath came shallow. What is her name, sir?" he managed. The commander replied without hesitation. "Inspector General Eleanor Ward." The room spun. Every joke, every smirk, every dismissive comment. All recorded, observed, judged. Marcus stood slowly, legs unsteady. "Sir," he said hoarsely, "you may return," the commander interrupted, "and conduct yourself accordingly." As Marcus turned toward the door, one thought burned through his mind, louder than any alarm he'd ever heard. He hadn't just mocked a quiet woman. He had mocked the person who now held his career in her hands. When Colonel Marcus Hale walked back into the operations hall, the room felt different. That IT wasn't loud anymore. The conversations that had buzzed freely an hour earlier fell silent, one by one, as people sensed the shift in the air. Chairs stopped scraping. Laptops paused mid-typing. Even the digital maps seemed to hum more quietly. And there she was. Inspector General Eleanor Ward stood exactly where she had been before, near the edge of the room, hands loosely folded, posture calm. But now Marcus saw her clearly, as if a veil had been torn away. She wasn't quiet because she was weak. She was quiet because she didn't need to prove anything. Marcus straightened his shoulders, forcing his breathing to slow. Decades of discipline kept him moving forward even as his stomach twisted. "All right," he said, voice tighter than usual. "Let's continue." Eleanor turned slightly, giving him her full attention. "No smile, no frown, just focus." Marcus cleared his throat. "Inspector General Ward," he said, every word deliberate, "I understand now who you are. I apologize for not formally welcoming you earlier." Her gaze held his for a moment that felt uncomfortably long. "Thank you, Colonel," she replied. "Please proceed as you normally would." Normally, that word echoed in his mind like an accusation. He resumed the briefing, but it was no longer effortless. Each instruction felt heavier. Every joke he might have made stayed locked behind his teeth. He became acutely aware of how often he interrupted others, how sharply he cut off junior officers, and Eleanor noticed everything. She took notes, not constantly, not dramatically, but at moments that mattered. When Marcus dismissed a concern without explanation. When a captain hesitated before speaking. When Reyes glanced at the floor instead of challenging an unsafe assumption at the T1 point, a young intelligence analyst finally spoke up. "Sir," she said, voice steady but nervous, "the satellite data suggests increased activity near Grid 7. We might need to reconsider." Marcus opened his mouth to snap back. Then he stopped. He felt Eleanor's presence like gravity. He exhaled slowly. "Go on." The analyst blinked, surprised. She continued, more confident now, laying out the data. Others joined in. The discussion grew sharper, better. For the first time that day, the plan actually improved. Eleanor's pen moved once to by early afternoon. The briefing concluded. Marcus dismissed the room, and officers filed out quietly, casting glances at Eleanor that mixed curiosity with awe. When the hall was nearly empty, Eleanor approached Marcus. "Colonel Hale," she said, "may we speak privately?" "Yes, ma'am." They moved into a side office. The door closed with a soft click that sounded far too final. Eleanor didn't sit right away. She stood by the window, looking out at the training field where soldiers ran drills under the harsh sun. "Do you know why the Inspector General's office exists?" she asked. "To ensure compliance." Marcus replied automatically. "To enforce standards." She nodded. "That's the official answer." She turned to face him. "The real reason is trust. The military operates on trust between leaders and subordinates, between command and consequence. When that trust erodes, people die." Marcus swallowed. "You're a capable officer," Eleanor continued. "Your record reflects courage, intelligence, commitment. But leadership isn't just about results. It's about how those results are achieved." She opened her folder. "I observed you belittle subordinates under the guise of humor," she said calmly. "I observe you dismiss input without evaluation. I observe a culture where junior personnel hesitate to speak, not because they lack ideas, but because they fear ridicule." Each sentence landed like a controlled strike. Marcus said nothing. "I also observed," Eleanor added, "that once you became aware of accountability, your behavior shifted. You listened. You adapted. The plan improved." She closed the folder. "That tells me something important." Marcus finally spoke. "That I'm afraid of consequences. That you're capable of change," she corrected. The silence stretched. "What happens now?" Marcus asked quietly. "That depends," Eleanor said, "on what kind of leader you choose to be when no one is watching." She stood. "There will be a formal report. It will not be gentle, but it will be fair." She paused at the door. "One more thing, Colonel." "Yes, ma'am." "You mocked me because I was quiet," she said, not unkindly. "Many of the best leaders I've known were." Then she left. The report dropped 2 weeks later. IT rippled through the base like an aftershock. Marcus Hale was not removed from command, but he was placed under mandatory leadership review. His unit was flagged for cultural restructuring. Senior command issued directives emphasizing psychological safety, open communication, and accountability. Some officers scoffed. Others listened. Marcus did more than comply. He changed. Morning briefings became conversations. Junior officers were invited, expected to challenge assumptions. Mistakes were analyzed, not mocked. Slowly, hesitation gave way to confidence. Reyes noticed first. "You're different," Reyes said one evening. Marcus nodded. "I was wrong." Reyes studied him. "That doesn't happen often." Marcus gave a dry smile. Apparently, it took an inspector general pretending to be invisible. Months later, Eleanor returned. This time announced. The same operations hall. The same maps, but not the same atmosphere. Marcus greeted her formally, respectfully. "So, did everyone else?" She observed again, listened again. And this time, she smiled. To the end of the visit, she called Marcus aside. "Your unit has improved significantly," she said. "Not because of new equipment or new orders. Because people talk now," Marcus said. "Because people are heard." Eleanor corrected. She extended her hand. Marcus shook it, firm and steady. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For teaching me that authority doesn't come from volume." Eleanor inclined her head. "It comes from integrity." As she walked away, Marcus watched her go, not as a threat, not as a judge, but as a reminder. The quiet woman he had mocked had not destroyed his career. She had saved it, and perhaps, someday, the lives of those who would now speak up when it mattered most.